important things about creativity and about brainstorming. And that is, one, have a good challenge, make up a story, and two, have some constraints or some limitations. Everything that we do in creative thinking, we think outside the box. We want to have all possibilities there, but all possibilities is too much. It's too hard to come up with good creative ideas when there's all possibilities. And constraints are present in every situation, right? We always don't have an unlimited amount of funds or time or knowledge or whatever it is. And so constraints are always present. So I'm going to talk a little bit about creating good challenges, understanding constraints, and then using your challenges and your constraints to get better ideas. How many people have ever thought, I need a good idea right here? I need some good ideas, right? Whether you're by yourself, maybe you're in a brainstorming meeting with your work, or with a civic organization, or your church, or whatever it might be, we need to get some good ideas. Alex Osborne developed the term brainstorming. There was 4 rules of brainstorming. That's on the back of your sheet. The 4 rules is go for quantity, don't criticize, welcome wild ideas, and then combine and improve upon other people's ideas. Those are his 4 rules, and those are good rules, but they're not enough. I realized a few years ago that those rules didn't really get me good brainstorming sessions, didn't get me good ideas, so I developed what's called the Creativity Cube. The Creativity Cube has 6 sides: challenges and constraints, which we just mentioned; criteria, how we pick good ideas; cultivation, or preparation. How many times after you want an idea, you're driving home, you're mowing the lawn, you're in the shower, you're like, oh, that's a good idea, right? Cultivation, getting us prepared. Collaboration and conflict, which is how to deal in a group process. We're doing group brainstorming. And finally, creators or tools, which we're going to talk about a couple today. On this side of your worksheet, this side of the sheet is actually a worksheet that you can use. Feel free to copy it, do whatever you want if you find it useful to help yourself generate ideas. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge. We know that we have to have a challenge, we have to have some constraints. Here's the thing about a challenge. There's 3 aspects to every good challenge. If the challenge is good, it's going to need these 3 aspects. 1, it has to be legitimate. It must need to be solved. If you've ever been in a meeting where you worked at a large corporation and somebody gives you a challenge to come up with ideas, and you're like, it doesn't really matter if we solve this or not. You don't really feel motivated to come up with good ideas, right? It has to be legitimate. The second thing, it must come from authority. If the junior intern says, hey, let's solve this problem, as opposed to the COO or the VP or the owner says, let's solve this problem, that level of authority has a huge amount of difference in the way that we come up with ideas. So the challenge must come from authority. The third thing is, there needs to be a personal connection between the challenge and the people who are trying to brainstorm or come up with ideas. Doesn't maybe have to affect them directly personally, but they need to feel a personal connection, because then their creative juices, their good creativity is really going to come out. Then the last thing, we're going to structure a statement in our challenge. I'm going to structure it in 2 ways. One is, we're going to start with these words. In what ways might we? Trying to remember that we're trying to generate lots of ideas. One of Alex Osborne's 4 rules. We want lots and lots of ideas. In what ways might we? Then the last thing is there's going to be a level of abstraction or specificity to the challenge. That is inherent in every statement that we make, and let's figure out what the appropriate level of specificity is. Let me give you an example. I can say, in what ways might we save on printing costs? That's fairly specific. I can get even more specific. In what ways might we save on toner costs, right? Or I can get less specific. In what ways might we save on communication costs, right? So I'm changing my level of specificity. And this is important because we can actually utilize the level of specificity later to generate better ideas. Here's the thing, we're going to talk about constraints. We don't have an unlimited amount of time, money, etc. There's always constraints present. We want to bring those constraints out into the open to make sure that we understand, A, what the final solution, what the final solution must meet, the limitations on the final solution, but also we're going to use those constraints to help generate better ideas. There's 3 types of constraints. One is resource. A resource constraint might be money, it might be skills or knowledge that we lack, maybe people that we don't have. Those are resource constraints. The other kind is a constraint of method. Method is the manner in which we must do something. This happens a lot. We have HIPAA, if you're in healthcare, Sarbanes-Oxley if you're with a big corporation. So those are manners. Maybe you have company policies that say you have to do things in a certain way. So there's constraints of method. And the last thing is there's constraints of time, right? We don't have an unlimited amount of time, so we have constraints of time, which is two different kinds of constraints. One is a deadline. Taxes are due on April 15th. The other one is an amount of time that we have, an elapsed time. We only want to spend 4 hours doing this, right? So the constraints of time. So what we do is list out what are the constraints that we have right here. Now we're going to come to the fun part. Let's think of some ideas. Boom, we're going to think of ideas. There is lots and lots of tools to help us think about ideas. I'm going to give you a couple examples. I've broken them down into two categories. One is called challenge busters. We're going to take our challenge and we're going to modify it in some way to help us get different ideas. So let's go back to my example. Maybe we brainstorm, we come up with ideas about how to save on printing costs. One great way is to change the level of abstraction. How to change on communication costs. Gives you different ideas, right? Here's an example. I was with a group running, it's our neighborhood HOA. They said, we want to come up with ideas on how we're going to throw a birthday party. We came with some ideas, and I said, let's change the level of abstraction. Instead of say throw a birthday party, let's say celebrate a birthday. They're like, oh, different ideas, right? Now we're not limited to a party. Just by changing the level of abstraction from birthday party to celebrate a birthday, they had different ideas. So changing your level of abstraction is a great tool. There are many, many more tools that I use for doing challenge busting, but that's just a really good one that you can use yourself. Change the level of abstraction. The next thing is we're going to do constraint busters. So we're going to change our constraints. Take any constraint we listed, whether it's resource or method or time, and we're going to, one of my favorite tools, again, there's dozens of tools, but one of my favorite tools to use is called Scamper. Scamper is an acronym. It stands for substitute, combine, adapt, maximize or minimize. And before you write it down, you can go to my website, brainstorm.coach. There's 2 videos on that website, and this is presented in a lot more detail for free. Just go and download it, or don't just watch, you get more. So, maximize or minimize, put to another use, eliminate or reverse. A great tool. Let me give you an example. Same group of people. They said, we only want to spend $100 on this party, on this celebration. So I said, well, let's take that constraint and let's reverse it. We reversed it to, instead of spend $100, we want to make $100 on this party. They were like, oh, well, this brings up some different ideas. What they actually ended up doing, instead of throwing a birthday party for $100, is they had a fundraiser to celebrate this person's birthday, and the money went to the youth group at their church. And it was a wonderful time. It was a great time, they said. Of course, I didn't get to go, but it was an awesome time. They raised money for the youth group at the church, and the reason they thought of that idea is because they changed the level of abstraction in their challenge from throw a party to celebrate a birthday, and they changed the resource constraint of money from $100 and reversed it to make $100, and they come up with completely different ideas. And the ideas that they used, they wouldn't have come up with if they hadn't have done those 2 things. So, in summary, use the worksheet, list out your challenge. In what ways might we? Make sure it's legitimate, authoritative, have you have a personal connection, and you have the right level of specificity or abstraction. List your challenges. What are your challenges of resource and method and time? And then use tools like changing the level of specificity, or tools like using Scamper to change your constraints and generate different ideas. Do it multiple times. Minimize a constraint. Maybe you have a money constraint of $100 and you say, what about if we had $1 million? What could we do? Doesn't mean you can spend $1 million, but it might generate different ideas in your brain. What about if we had 0? Instead of saying, I have an hour, what about if I only had a minute to do this? Does that change the ideas that you get in your brain? And so try to change those different things and then generate more ideas. Brainstorm different ideas, more ideas. You'll get more and more and better ideas. The idea is to get lots and lots of ideas and then pick the best ones afterwards. I talk about all 6 sides in much more depth in this 10 minutes on my videos. So there's about 20 minutes of videos to go and use. And then I also offer 1 hour lunch and learns, 4-hour workshops, and if you have a group that needs facilitation, I'll come in and facilitate creativity and innovation sessions for your groups. And that's, it can take a long time to prepare for them, but I'll teach you everything you need to know about how to get more and better ideas. Any questions? You ready? All right, thank you.